What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Ruben and Jessie podcast. As always, I am Jessie.
And I'm Ruben.
And if this is your first time, this is not your last time. Welcome to part 2 of whatever this thing is going to be called, podcast.
Blank. Dot.
Dot. But you'll see it with the titles and you'll be following along. Last episode, we were talking about nutrition, carnivore diet, meat and honey, and today, my friends,
juicy one.
It's a juicy or lack thereof juice.
Or that, yes.
It's a lack of juice podcast. Maybe that's the title, lack of juice.
I highly recommend you don't listen to this on speaker. Put your headphones on. Be some rated XX.
XX. Don't listen to this with your mama.
Don't listen to your mama with your kids.
Don't listen to we're gonna go somewhere with this one.
Oh yeah. But before we do that, I think it warrants that if you haven't already, please subscribe, share the podcast. I'd say not probably publicly, but privately with your gentlemen, because it's going to be really close with gentlemen. And if you have a partner, I think it'll be good to share with your partner as well. Maybe listen together, because there's going to be some shit that we're about to get into.
Shit we're about to talk about. Some shit I would have never thought in a million years.
Seriously.
I would ever choose to do. But we're here and this is our reality. And so
let's dive in. Dive right in, bro.
Let's dive in. So let me set the stage. You know, it's all about setting the stage. So one of our good friends, Nikita, actually, let me backtrack for a little bit. So masturbation, let's start with masturbation. I've been jerking off. God, I hope my mother doesn't listen to this podcast. I've been jerking off since I was 12 years old. You know, I remember the first time I felt a sensual experience on my member was I was in the shower and I was like laying in the tub and the water was like sprinkling my wanka. And I was like, ooh, I don't know what this is, but I like it. I'm gonna stay here for a minute. And then my buddy grew and I was like, ooh. And then it kept so that was the beginning of literally, you know, I'll be turning 24 in a few weeks. It's literally been 12 years of ejaculating and masturbating. And there have definitely been ebbs and flows as far as the amount and consistency. And it was about, you know, I'd say 2 or 3 years ago when I'm really trying to pinpoint this properly, but I'd say 2 years ago. I'd say it was about 2 years ago when I first started, because I heard of no FAP from like Elliot Hulse when I was a teenager, but I was like, fuck that shit.
Who wants to do that?
I was like, no way, Jose. But then about 2 years ago, it really started to click with me as I started developing my spiritual practice and my energy started becoming more sensitive to the way I felt. That was when I first started realizing that, hey, maybe there's something to this masturbation thing. And as I've spoken on the podcast many times before about my binge eating days, I found that masturbation would operate in very much the same way. And honestly, I'll be jumping around here because I really got that clarity after I was able to move past binge eating. But I found that like in times of stress, in times of boredom, in times of emotional unrest, in times of anger, in times of, you know, XYZ things, I would lean towards just rubbing one out, you know. Or another one was this intense energy that would come up into my body,
you know what
and
to
it
do
would,
with it.
and I've heard this, like I've heard this, plenty of times with guys where they're like, yo, sometimes I just can't focus. Like if I don't get it out, I just can't focus.
It's the scene from The Wolf of Wall Street when he's like, you gotta get focused, you gotta go in the bathroom, rub one out real quick. Matthew McConaughey's character.
Yeah. All right.
All right,
Yeah.
all right.
So that, and that was definitely a narrative for me, and then where I would just release. And the same was true with binge eating, in the sense of like, there would be this energy of like intensity that I would suppress it. I would suppress it by the food. Whereas with masturbating, I would release the energy, right? And with binge eating, I would suppress it. So I started seeing all these correlations, and then you start doing all the research on what pornography does to the brain, what it does to your hormones, and how it kind of manipulates your perspective on women, on sex in general, all of these things. And that was so true. And we'll return to this later on as we discuss kind of some of the things that we've been doing lately. But when that started happening, I began to have this sort of back and forth between like, all right, I'm going to jerk off, but I won't watch porn. But then I'll ultimately come back to porn. And I was like, all right, I got to stop watching porn and just jerk off. And then whatever, back and forth.
Same story.
And it was, please, actually, if you want to dive into your own kind of, let's bring the Ruben journey up to speed here as well, my brother.
I would say majority of men have a similar experience. I mean, I'm a little older, so I was lucky enough to not have the internet when I first started. But very similar. In the shower, I was soaping my body. I get to that point, for some reason, the grow begins, and then I was like, oh, this feels good. And I was around the same age. And then I had like an uncle, Danny, may he rest in peace, who was the first one to showing me a Playboy magazine. I was just like blown away at Playboy.
Wow.
And then my cousin like found his dad's stash of like porn VHS tapes. And although we couldn't watch it because obviously his parents he was able to get the sleeve. So we would just look at the naked ladies with bushes. So like some of the first women I ever seen naked had bushes, like hair down there. They weren't like sleeky clean like you see the porn stars are nowadays. So that's how it started. And it was probably until I was 14 where like I accidentally stumbled upon pornography on TV, like Playboy channel and the Spice channel, or looking between the black and white lines, I could see a tit, like all the
after hours, bro.
But I never really like winked it until like, because I would just have an explosion. Like I would watch, I wouldn't even touch myself, and it'd just be like, oh, here it goes.
Wow.
Until like I fused the two when we first got a computer. Back then we had like LimeWire or Kazaa for my older folks.
Damn, you're bringing it back, man.
Exactly. So it wasn't until then when I was able to like, oh, I can download these things, and that's when I really started like watching porn. I was probably like I was like 14 I was 13 when we got a computer, and I stumbled upon being able to do that when I was 14. And I lost my virginity at 15. But similar thing, like constantly did it like throughout my life until I was maybe like 23 when I first found out, 22, 23, I first found out about NoFap. And I was like, I ain't gonna do that shit, you crazy? And then all these guys that I was chilling with when I used to go out and like do the game and pick up women with all these guys, and these guys would be like, I haven't masturbated in 2 months, I feel fucking powerful. And I was just like, is that really a thing? So it wasn't until I met one guy who I respected in our community, and he was like, yeah, I haven't done it in 6 months. I was like, what? So I was like, okay, I'm gonna try it out. Only lasted 30 days, but I did 30 days
yeah
of not doing it. But yeah, so So yeah, man, similar. It's very similar. A little
Mm-hmm.
different, but very, very similar in that time, like you.
You know, it's interesting, as I heard you talking about, especially like the TV, like when it was on TV, it just brought me back to the fact that like when I was a teenager masturbating, how much more interesting it was because it was so secretive, like because it was so under wraps, and you kind of like could only do it at certain hours, and you did only have access to certain type of entertainment.
You kind of had to figure it out, like how
You
you're
kind of
gonna
had to
do
figure it
it.
out.
Yeah.
And it was so new, you know what I mean? Like it was such a new thing. Whereas into my 20s, it was kind of just like, all right, type in Pornhub, look at it, rub it out, and move on with your day. Like it became such a utility versus like when I was in my teens, it was very much like this like secretive little
You
thing
couldn't
that
do
I
it
did for
every day.
myself.
Sometimes you only
you couldn't.
Like mom left to go grocery shopping on Saturday, and your brother went with them, and then you were like, I'm alone at home, and then you could do it.
Legitimately, so true. Like when no one was home, that was like the time. You were like, yo, I could set the space up. I could be fucking naked. It was crazy. That's so
you
true,
gave me
bro.
Such a bad like image of you just sitting on the couch, butt ass naked.
Yo, butt ass naked, bro. I was like, I'm free. I'm a free man. I could do what I want right now. You know what I mean? It was crazy. It was crazy how insane that experience was when it was so secretive versus like what it became, you know?
Right.
So anyway, what began to happen was as I started to build my so this is, like I said, been back in my head for 2 years now, and there were times where I would attempt to quit and just it wouldn't work. I'd attempt to quit and it wouldn't work. And it was sort of all around the same time when, I started building a friendship with Nikita, and I think when we met, he was already like 6 or 7 months into no masturbation. And that was the first person I met that went that long without it, and like, of course, as a guy, if I hear that, I'm gonna get competitive. I'm gonna be like, oh, word. Oh, word, you want to do that? All right, I'm gonna figure it out. And I was legitimately having like a struggle. Like I remember I committed to doing it for a month and I failed and I rubbed one out. But what also happened was two things. Like one was that really started to fuck with me was the fact that all this stuff was starting to come out about human trafficking and the relations to these porn websites, like Pornhub, like YouPorn, like all these like main channels were actively offering and participating in human trafficking. And so at that point, like anytime I try to rationalize myself in saying like, oh, I won't use Pornhub anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I won't use Pornhub. I'll use a different thing. But then you think about it, it's like, is there really a difference? Like, is there really a difference between these servers? You know what I mean?
Yeah, sometimes you find the same video on all of them.
Exactly. So is there really a difference? What makes you think that like one is not serving the other?
Exactly.
So there was that. And that really started to bother the shit out of me. The fact that I was participating actively in an industry that was part of this disgusting, horrifying thing.
Right.
And then the other part of it was I started to do I've talked about this on the podcast before. I started to do the heart breathing, and the heart breathing really began to intensify my self-awareness, my energetic awareness. And I really started to notice that like, when I rub one out, I like my energy goes. Like I really just I get depressive, or my emotional states kind of waver. Because I would get this high from the breath work and the meditation. And then as soon as I rub one out, I'd feel that low frequency energy, take over me.
Because you hit like a pinnacle, and then your body is like, okay, it's rest time.
Yeah, exactly. And also like if you consider that everything is energy, than me watching these things on, like, most of what I'm watching, you know, is not, they're not consciously, a lot of the people who are in pornography are not like, well, not even just they're acting, they themselves, the ones who are participating in the act, and the ones behind the camera, like everyone part of the project, majority of them are traumatized people, you know. And that's not to say that, like, that's not to say that there aren't conscious sex workers. You know, I'm sure there are conscious sex workers out there, and they definitely offer a lot of support to people. But I highly doubt that, like, I've watched documentaries in the porn industry, and there's no like, for majority of them, there's really not like a strong incentive to be a part of it, or like a strong moral incentive to be a part of it. It's a really sleazy business where people get fucked over, and a lot. Management is disgusting. Like, it's really a dirty business. And so you consider everyone who's playing a role in that, the frequency of everyone who's participating in the creation of this thing, is very likely to have disturbed energy, right? And you're choosing to literally
consume it with it,
not only just consume it, but like full body on taking, right? Because like jerking off is a fucking real physical, it's a full body thing.
It's
a full, and you're actively participating with this thing that has this type of energy, right? It's like when you listen to like music that, you know, makes you want to kill yourself or makes you want to fucking cry. Like, it's a full embodied experience because of the energy of the music and the artist.
Well, we're about to get meta, because
we stay getting meta. You know what I'm saying?
That's been a lot on my mind for the last like 3 years.
What has?
The idea of like consciously choosing, beyond just, you know, pornography, but music, what you watch, and if you're watching something that doesn't have that good energy, like being aware of it and being like, this is fascinating, and looking at it more of like a social experiment, versus even with porn 3 years ago, when I think it was 3 years ago when we had Dom on for the first time. No, I forgot. But Dominic Quartuccio, we talk about him a few times. He's been on podcast 2 times, folks. He has a podcast, and I remember listening to, like, he had Lisa Ann on the podcast, who's like one of the most famous porn stars of all time. So you talking about like a lot of these people are like traumatized, and you can listen to how the industry is if you listen to that podcast with like Lisa Ann. Eric Weinstein had Riley Reid, another big time porn star, on his podcast. And it's just fascinating to hear people who are in these industries, women that I've watched in the past, and you're just like, oh fuck, like, you know. And I remember when I listened to one of Dom's podcasts about like, this was last year. He had a podcast on like consciously choosing specific porn sites, but they were like, you have to pay for them annual membership or something like that. But the fact that those are popping up is cool. I know that's not where we're going to. We're about to get meta. So I'm just warning people here, but I want to make sure people know, like, if this is not a path they decide to take, or where we're talking about, that there are other paths to take to really stop going to these websites. Because I think that's very, very important for any man or woman listening to this, that there are conscious websites that are utilizing the platform that is porn and watching actual art, and amateurs versus watching these horrible, like, traumatized people, this like disgusting, like, when you watch it, you're just like, oh my God, the gangbangs and the other crap that's out there that I never even went that far, you know, like, because I was just terrified of that stuff. But there's some toxic, dark shit in there.
Well, you know, I'll be completely honest here in saying that, like, I've definitely noticed that depending on my mood,
right,
like if there was some shit that was on my mind or on my heart that I was upset about or pissed off about, I would want to watch more domineering sexual acts towards a woman. Yeah, I would watch, like, the more I was upset, not always, it wasn't like a this equals that thing, but I do recall where I would be more into aggressive, domineering sex videos, the more I was frustrated with my life. Because it's like this sense of like overpowering, this like sense of like just just taking it out on someone or something, without having the responsibility of really doing it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I like I've never shared that before, and I also would love to hear if anyone else has had that experience, because I know it's definitely true for me. Yeah, like it's actually just like an interesting thing to just observe. Like if you masturbate often and you watch porn often, it would just be interesting to observe yourself.
Right. Like just
as
third
you do
person,
it.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. Just like do it. Like if you're doing it, do it and just observe what is going on when you're doing it or why you do it. Like just watch yourself, because it is a fascinating thing to explore, because in many ways that moment is so intimate, right? It's probably like the first, it's probably like one of those things, those few moments in your day where you're choosing to please yourself, right? It's like your way of like self-care.
Exactly.
Right? It's your version of self-care. So there's obviously a reason there might be underlying reasons as to why you're choosing to do that, other than it feels good. So I'd invite you to just like watch yourself do it and see what the fuck's going on.
Conscious of be conscious of what you're looking at, be conscious of like what really gets to you, you know what I mean? Like what exactly are you doing? It's really fascinating when you do that, because I have done that. Like look at it third person and just be like, like why did I type this specific thing in the search bar? Why did I pause this midway and open up another tab to see a different thing? Why do I have 6 different tabs open with 6 different kinds of women in different positions? I don't know. Like I'm just making that last one up, but these are things that I've done and I've noticed, and I'm like, why the fuck did I just do that? Like why the hell do I have all of this? Am I trying to create a harem in my head or something? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's definitely fascinating. And then so the last thing that kind of sealed the deal for what I'm going to express, which is the moment I decided to really quit masturbating and stop it completely, which was right after I shifted my relationship with Valentina, the girl I was, for those who have listened, this is my ex-girlfriend. And when I moved out of that relationship, to backtrack, when I was living in San Diego, me and Valentina had a long distance relationship. And I remember when I was out there, I was jerking off a lot. And I just recall how shitty that felt. You know what I mean? Like it was just like so depressing to do that. And I was afraid, honestly. It was like part of it was fear. Like I don't want to go back into that place, because I had already started doing the breath work and really feeling good. I started to really feel good and absorb.
Oh no.
Not right now. I'm gonna lose.
Sorry, folks. Jesse froze for a minute, so you probably heard me say, "Oh no, oh no."
So where am I now?
I think you're good, and we're back.
What was the last thing you heard me say?
That you were starting the meditations in San Diego. You were feeling good about that, but you were still having the issue with the.
Oh no! So I wasn't starting the meditations in San Diego. I was starting them here, right before my relationship with Val shifted, and I was feeling good, and I didn't want to lose that, because that was sort of my anchor coming out of that relationship. A lot of things at home changing, a lot of things at work changing. There was a lot of change in general, and I was like, I have to stay steady right now, because if I if I lean off into an emotional roller coaster, this isn't going to end well, you know, because not like right now, there's nothing anchored in my life other than me. So if I lose my own anchor, shit is going to go awry, right? So it was really a practical sort of almost like survival decision to not do that, because I knew I couldn't allow myself to lose my mental edge in that sense. And so, and like I said, it was a combination of all these things. It was already creeping up, and you know, Nikita challenged us to a month of not doing it. I failed. And so the second time I made the decision, I was like, I'm doing this. Like I'm setting this in stone. I'm done. And it was really one of those experiences where it's like, when the choice is real, you don't have to fight for it anymore, you know? And for me, it was that at least that's the truth that I found in my life, which is like when a choice is aligned, legitimately aligned with where you are, and you see the truth of it, you don't have to fight for it. And so once I stopped, you know, like, of course there were urges. Of course there were like moments where like I got horny and I didn't have a sexual partner around. So I would want to do it. Yeah, but I would want to do it, but I would sit with it. I would choose to sit with it because I just made that commitment, and I knew it became this thing of like candy. You know, we talked about this before, where it was like, it's sort of like, you know, of course there are times when I want to go have a chocolate bar or I want to have a cheeseburger. Of course there are times where these cravings can come up, but I know the repercussions, and it's the repercussions that keep me from doing that, because I'm like, okay, I'm going to have, you know, 15 minutes of pleasure and then 12 hours of discomfort and then guilt and shame and all those things. It's like, I'd rather just avoid the 15 minutes. And masturbation is even less. Masturbation is like 2 to 5 minutes of like pleasure, and then you're done. But then you have to, the whole rest of your day is you kind of feeling like whatever, you know? And so that was the start of that. And I would say, you know, that feeling of energetic strength and sustainability was really starting to populate itself after month 1 and deep into month 2. Deep into month 2 was when I really started to feel more and more sensitive energetically. And mind you, I'm still doing the breath work. I'm still doing, you know, meditating twice a day and doing eating clean, exercising, doing all the other practices. But I would say that the letting that go was really starting to evolve. And then, you know, mind you, like I was still active sexually. I have been active sexually, right? So there were women who I was seeing and enjoying our time together. But what was interesting that started to happen was my narrative, because I'm no longer watching porn, right? I'm no longer watching porn. I'm no longer jerking off. My narrative around my interactions with women and my narrative around sex was starting to change. And what I started to notice was like that, like sex is obviously very interesting. And I know, like, we recently had a podcast about me talking about, you know, polyamory and multiple relationships, and like how sex is a beautiful way to explore somebody. And it is beautiful. When I say it became less interesting, it's the same, you know, to relate it back to food, because that's like the best thing I can bring it to. Right. It's like, pizza's really good. Like, pizza is delicious. I fucking love pizza. But when you stop having pizza and you start eating other things, and when you find other fuel sources, pizza is still good, but it's not as interesting as it was when it was just something that was regularly in life, you know? Yep. And you can replace pizza with whatever it is, right? It becomes less interesting because it's not as you're not pulled towards it as hard as you were before. Your cravings are not as strong. So my cravings for sexual pleasure or sexual release were not as strong as they were when I was jerking off all the time. And then, because I was becoming more and more used to not acting on my sexual urges, meaning like, if that energy came up where I was like, yo, I'm horny, or like, yo, I need to rub one out, I wouldn't do it. Right. So I was becoming accustomed. To not responding to my urges. So then when I was with these women, I didn't like, it wasn't like the goal. Like it wasn't so, the force wasn't so strong as to like, let's get naked, let's bang, let's do it. And then also how did I put this? Like I started, I started becoming very picky around what I enjoyed in that type of experience, because before it was like, I just want to, let's go, let's just rock out, I'll please you, you please me, and we're good to go. But then it became like, well, I don't even necessarily need this experience anymore as much as I did before, because it was such a urge for me that I felt I needed it. Now it became sort of like a choice. And so for me, I started having like just preferences in the bedroom, and what I liked, what I didn't like, and what I responded to, what I didn't respond to. It was really funny, and I almost felt kind of ashamed about it, but at the same time I was like, oh, my mindset around this is changing. I was noticing that my mindset around sex was changing. And so that started happening. And before we go into the next part,
the big part,
the big cajone, I'd like to bring it back to you for a second and kind of to talk about your own journey, of masturbation and where that's kind of led you to most recently.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's a journey. That's what I can say. I mean, for both of us. I mean, you all just heard Jesse's story, and it's very much the same. Like trying it, figuring out like, oh, NoFap is a thing, doing it for those 30 days that I did it originally. But within those 30 days, I was still, having sex with beautiful women. And then I remember just when I went to China, and it got just like you mentioned, like it was bad, right? Like when you were in San Diego, it was really bad. When I was in China, it was really bad. You know what I mean? The good thing about it was that the internet sucks ass out there. So because I needed a VPN, because like they block everything out there. I think they even block porn sites as well, at least American porn sites. But I remember getting a VPN. I used to pay $15 a month, mostly to watch Netflix, but also because I was able to access pornography. But it was hard because I couldn't watch, long form videos, short form, whatever. And I remember at one point, just like, I think I was home alone for like 2 days. We ended up having a typhoon. So like work got closed down. It's a typhoon similar to a hurricane. So we were stuck at home. They kind of was like, don't go outside. So I remember during that time, I just did it way too much in one day. And that last time I did it, I was just like, why am I doing this? I feel disgusting. So I remember just like completely cutting it off. Like, that's it. I'm not going to do it. I probably cut it off for like 2-3 weeks and then just jump right back in. Just because I think it was just the pressure of like everything, like just like being in a different country, not knowing too many people, my partner on the other side of the world, like all these things hitting me. I just couldn't handle it at the time. And then fast forward to, continued again, but I continued differently. I was like, I won't watch videos. So I switched to pictures. You try your best, man. It's so funny, like how you try to, like, any man going through this, like your body, it's like, it's literally an addiction. It will find ways for you to still do it. It will find ways, and it'll try to, I forget what the word is. It'll try to be like, if I do it like this, it's okay. If I do it like that, it's okay. I'm not watching videos on these particular sites. I'm just looking at nude pictures. Like, it'll just
how we
out.
rationalize
rationalize
our choices.
So I did that for a few months. Actually, I just utilized pictures. Did that for a few months, and then I moved in with my aunt. And I just told Karina this morning about this. Unlike the last time I tried to stop, and I lasted a pretty decent time, like a little over 30 days, was when I lived with my aunt in the basement, and it was the same thing. I did it too many times one night, and I felt like shit, and I was just like, I'm gonna stop this.
Can
Stopped it,
you
and then went
can
back
you
in.
I'm just curious, can you recall uh 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 why, what would come up during those days where you would jerk off like multiple times in a day? Because I know for me, it was definitely when I was binge eating. Like the
Oh
same
wow,
days when I would binge eat,
you would do
I
it.
would masturbate like multiple times a day, to the point where like I would have to fight for something to come out of it, because
Right.
it was just nothing. You know,
Yeah, your
it was
body was
dead.
just
It was
like,
just done.
bro, I have no life in me
I've
left.
got nothing left. But it was just like obsession of like, just like this desire to depress myself, you know, or
Right.
suppress, like, or like just let the steam out. Was
But it's
just,
also a drug, right? Because you get a
yeah,
huge dopamine,
exactly.
and
Yeah.
then you
It's a
just go
whole, it's a
down.
huge dopamine rush.
Yeah.
So what was it for you? What do you recall, what was coming up for you during those days
It
that
was,
you would?
I think, I mean, it was a mixture of things. I think there was a little bit of shame for not being where I wanted to be in life.
Mm-hmm.
um Loneliness, because like both ties away. Yes, I live with my aunt, and like it was my cousin living in the house, my aunt's husband and everything. There were people upstairs, but like late at night, everyone went to bed kind of early. My aunt would go to bed like 9:30. I wouldn't go to bed till like 1 2 a.m.
Mm,
um so that loneliness was a big thing. Me and Karina were having our most challenging time. So I was just like super stressed out about like what was gonna come out of that, because I didn't know at the time if we were gonna last, and like just thinking about like having to do it all over again, like be single and do all this crap. Um, I think it was like multiple men, just angry at myself for not being at the place where I wanted to be in life, angry at myself for making the decision that I made, for going to China, being crazy debt, yada yada yada. All these things all happen, all accumulation of these things would just hit me, and I just be like, I need to get this out of my body because it is energy. And then I would just rub it out, and then I feel like, no, I need to do it again because it's not enough, I'm still feeling it, and then rub it out again. Oh, I'm not enough, I'm doing it again, rub it out again. Because like it's like, like subconsciously, like the
mm,
energy exists within you, and you're trying to do something with it, but you don't know what to do
mm,
about it. So I think the most interesting one was when we went upstate with the guys, and I remember going through the mystical journey we all had,
mm-hmm,
and I remember there was just one part where it's just like, it was like we I don't know, it wasn't telling me anything, but it was showing me. It was like pleasure and then pain, and it was like how we
mm,
weave between these two constantly. So it was like pushing me into my body. This is what immense pleasure feels like, and it felt like too much. I was like, it's too much, I don't feel like it. But then when you
mm,
go into pain, it's very much the same, and it's like
mm,
these polarities exist, and you may think they're different, but they're so much the same, right? Like,
mm,
so it's just like this weird place that I was in. I remember just being like, getting out of that experience, being like, I never, like, for a little over a month, I think that was the longest I went without doing it. I think it was like 42 days with
mm,
no masturbation. And it was because I was just like, had that experience, and I was just like, too much pleasure. um,
mm, mm,
and I didn't, like, it will eventually turn into the pain because you get the dip right after. And then I think it was one day I was just like, I'm not gonna watch anything. I was sitting in a bath, like doing my Epsom salt bath for my body because I was in sore, and it just hit me. I didn't use porn. I didn't use porn for like 2 months, but then
mm-hmm.
all it took was a picture that led to a gift
Yep.
that led to a video, and then it's literally an addiction. All it takes is one
Yeah.
thing. Like even this right now, like we're talking about it, there can be triggers in all of this, right?
Mm,
If you're a
mm,
man going through this and you may be listening, you may, oh, I'm in the process of this. Like, sit with that, because I know triggers will be like, if you say a porn star's name that I know I've watched in the past, that's a
mm,
trigger,
mm-hmm.
right? If you talk about a particular like porn you watch, that's a trigger, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, I know these triggers exist. I'm self-aware now. Because before I didn't know, until the fact that I needed to constantly go through these ebbs and flows to know what are the triggers that get me into the moment, to rationalize why I should do it versus not doing it at all. So I think that's something to point out as well, like that self-awareness. I just spit all over your face. Sorry, Jesse.
It's okay, man. I like it. I like it.
But I think there's like, your body would try to rationalize, and it's just like, no, like this is not going to happen because, we're about to get into it. But like this, 23 days of no masturbation this time around was not my goal. I'm happy that one, you're doing it as well, and two, we have a group of other men who are who are in it as well. So if that feels, not only that, but three is like telling my partner that, hey, I'm really trying to stop this and I need your support, right? Like I'm gonna need your help during this, to make sure, and keeping the triggers away. What's a trigger? Well, if I have my phone after hours when everyone's asleep, I might sneak that in. I've already Googled applications you can use to try to block all these sites, right? Like you have to try all these things just to like rewire your brain, because we've done it for so long. I'm like, how long is that going to take to happen? Is it going to take 3 months, 6 months, a year? I don't know, right? Like, so that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, like I love that you brought up that thing that will happen, because that's happened to me so much, where I'll be like, oh yeah, like all right, I won't jerk off, and then I'll go, okay, I'll jerk off, but I won't watch anything.
Yeah.
And like I won't watch anything. And then it's crazy, like how you convince yourself.
How fast it happens.
How fast you're just like, fuck it, fuck it. Like you just go, fuck it, and then you're just in full porn mode. You're in full on porn mode. And that last part about the community, I mentioned it before with Nikita. It's like there is really something about having, if you're a guy listening to this, if you can have a community of men, if you can build that for yourself, that understand the importance of this, or can learn to understand the importance of this, then build that, create a group chat and commit to each other to stop, to stop this. Because, and look, I was talking about this with a friend recently. It's like, if you are someone who, let's say, for example, grew up in a very religious household where you were told to be ashamed of your body, ashamed of your sexuality, and you never touched yourself, and you've never explored yourself, and you've never had sex, to whatever level degree of extreme on that end, then you should probably go rub one out. Like you should probably
explore yourself, please.
You should probably go spend some time in the bathroom, in the shower, make yourself a bath.
Make it a ritual, yo.
Make it a ritual. Like
turn on the candles, like do the whole thing.
Exactly. Like go ahead, like you have my full permission to go ahead and explore yourself. Because that's true. There are those people like that. But if you're anything like me or like Ruben, and who's been doing it since you were a child and no restrictions on it, and you've just unconsciously just been addicted to sexual behavior since you were however old, then it might be interesting to explore to not doing it,
Right.
And so here we go. This is the part. This is what y'all been waiting for. So I have not been masturbating for a few months, and
give numbers, son. 3 months.
Huh? 3 months. 3 months.
3
right?
months.
I've not been masturbating for 3 months.
Yeah, we gotta make sure that folks know.
Yes, and the energy, like I said, has been strong, right? The energy in my meditations, in my breath work, and all my practices have been very, very strong. And not only that, and again, we said we're going to be meta here, so let's be meta. Like another thing is my my manifestation practices, like my ability to create things in this world, my ability to create opportunities for myself in all different forms, has been stronger and more powerful. And my ability to have self-confidence, I've always been a confident person, but it's and we've talked about this, I've gotten this feedback from you, from friends, like my entire way of being has been changing significantly over the last few months. And my self-assurance, my like clear cut, like direction, energy, and focus has been changing more and more. And it's only been 3 months, you know what I mean? And so what I began noticing was that when I would have sex with these women, I would like, and don't get me wrong, most of them, and I won't lie and say all of them, most of them were women who like I developed a connection with. We had a good chemistry in relation to each other, and what's it called? And so it was a pleasurable experience in the sense that like we were consciously going into this together.
Right.
And that was nice. But I would always, when I would do this, I would always have this thing in the back of my head that would go like, you have other things that are more vital and more important to you than this experience right now. And you're choosing this over that. And it wasn't even a judgment. It was just like a noticing. And I was like, hey, like you do have, like you're creating time to do this. And it would typically be later in the evening. So I'm going to bed late, later than I would like. And I'm not doing my night routine, because how am I going to do my night routine with this, girl in my bed? And my night routine is important to me, like meditating, reading, doing all those things. And like, you're choosing not to do that. You're spending time, energy, and money on this woman. And this may be a beautiful woman, this may be a beautiful person, but it's not it's not where your energy,
with where you are right now.
Exactly. It's not aligned with, that's perfect way of putting it. It's not aligned with what is calling me the strongest in my life right now.
Right.
So that was the first notice. Second thing I noticed was, and that was like the first like whisper, right? It was like the first like little in my ear. Then what happened was, I met with this girl, and like it was just that day we started talking, and then we got into it with each other, which I really don't do. But again, it's like a sex addiction, like sexual release is addictive. And you will rationalize your way into an experience, right? Especially if she's attractive, especially if it's on and it's working and it's good and it's easy. It's like, well, why not? And I remember I had that experience, and as soon as it was over, I was like, what did I just do? I was like, why? And it's not, again, this person was not a bad person. This person was cool. She was awesome. She was kind. But I was like, why did I just do that? And the next thing I noticed was, I lost that energy. Like that buzz that was going on in my body, all the thing I was cultivating for quite some time, especially in the month of April, because I've been doing a practice in the evening. That requires me to be home and requires that nobody else is with me. Like no one can sleep over, no one can be in my bed at these times, because it's a practice that I'm doing. It's a healing practice that I'm doing that requires that is sacred, and no one else can be around, right? And so there were multiple times where I've had to either say no to visiting someone or having someone come visit me. So I was going an extended period of time without sex, right? So like, because even though I haven't been masturbating for 3 months, I was still having a sexual experience, relatively frequent.
At least a week.
Yeah. And so I was ejaculating still pretty frequently, but this past month, I hadn't been, right? It had been cultivated for quite some time. And mind you, like that in itself is very powerful, because me, like in the past, if I had an opportunity to have sex with someone,
take it.
Oh man, I'll reprioritize in a heartbeat. You know, I'll change things around, I'll move things around, I'll shift, I'll rationalize, because I'm like, whoa, like I get to go do that. Yeah, hell yeah, let's go do that.
Notch under my belt.
Exactly. Like, whoa, I get to go have that experience. Yeah, like that's awesome. So it'd be very difficult for me to say no to a woman. And not even no to have sex with her, like no to just go see a woman, because it was
the possibility of sex.
Exactly, the possibility of sex, the possibility of her not wanting to have sex with me because I didn't go see her, right? Like losing out on an opportunity. So much of my life was navigating that. And like I said, like, so anyway, so I had that moment where I saw this girl, I ejaculated, and I immediately was like, oh, I lost it. Like I lost that buzz. I lost that like chi, right? That flow of energy that was pulsing throughout my body. It wasn't there. It wasn't as strong as I liked it. And I remember like she went home and I couldn't even go into my meditation. I didn't even want to. Like I was just like, like whatever, dude.
I just want to sleep.
And well, it wasn't even that I was like tired. It was more just like, like I was just like, like the contrast was so strong. So I remember I had that experience. And after that one, that was maybe, I'd say like 2 weeks ago. And these are all rough estimations, right? This was about 2 weeks ago. And I remember I started joking with myself. I was like, yo, what if you just like stop having sex, you know? And it was just a joke. Like I remember I was on a call with Nikita, and we were talking about our experience of not masturbating. And I told him, I was like, hey man, like I'm thinking about like just like quitting sex. Like I'm thinking about just doing that. And like as I said it, I was like, yeah, fuck that. Like, no, there's no way. Like it's like I was like, it's impossible. Like there's no way
I'm in a good spot right now. I got ladies, I'm single, I got my own spot.
Yeah, I was like, why would I ever say something like that? You know, like what's wrong with me, you know? And I made it as a joke, and we laughed it off. Even he laughed it off. Like we both just laughed it off and like moved on, right? And the thought did not go away, right? It didn't go away.
Bruh.
It planted that seed, because what I started to think about was really like, you know, what came up for me was like, I've always lived my life since I was a teenager, where my impression, it's so funny because I don't realize how deep we're really going in this podcast, but like these are things I've never talked about, you know. And so, but it feels so right.
Tea.
Yeah, y'all sip that shit. Sip that shit. But like this is so true, you know, and all of this is so true, so I feel comfortable talking about it. But it is, you know, it's special to even discuss these things, because I never had, you know, I've never really brought this into life before. So into light before. Most of my life, because when I was a kid, you know, or maybe this is one way of rationalizing it. I was unattractive, or at least I felt unattractive. I was not popular, or whatever people deem as popular. I was just not like a kid that, like, I got along with a lot of people, but I was never a kid that women were interested in, you know what I mean? Until when I went to high school, I noticed that, like, well, one, like my personality started to develop really strong, and I started to become, I still wasn't necessarily physically the most attractive guy, but my personality would really help me, because I was funny, I was a deep thinker, blah, blah, blah. I was witty, whatever, I could get along with people. And so women found that attractive. And that was the first time that I really started to develop those relationships. And I was like, oh yes, like I'm accepted, you know, like so much of my feeling of acceptance came from my ability to be sensual and sexual with women. And then that grew exponentially as I started to get into fitness, as I started to, you know, shape my body, shape my figure, shape my everything. And I became objectively more handsome. That increased even more. And like I've spent so much time like just chipping away at like making myself a more attractive man, to attract beautiful women, to attract women into my life. And also, I would hold this as a badge of honor, meaning like, and I think this is true for majority of men in our society, which is like, we're just sexual creatures. We're just dogs. You know what I mean? Like, we just like to fuck, like this idea. No, legitimately, like I would pride myself.
Thank you, media,
go ahead.
movies and entertainment.
Yeah.
Bro. Like that's really what it has been feeding us for God knows how long now, that we're just this wildebeest that can, like, if we see a woman walking, no matter how attractive or non-attractive she is to us, she gives us the okay, we'll do it anyway.
Yeah. We're total saps, right? Like we're total just like we'll do whatever to get it, and that we can't control ourselves, right? Like that we're just like we're these type of men who can't control themselves and will act on it, and just do something about it. That's been the narrative, and I've said this, right? I've said this before, where I was like, yeah, I'm just like, I got lots of testosterone. I'm a sexual man, and I like it, and I would own this.
4 girls to please this.
All right.
Just joking. Sorry.
And so I would tell myself this story, right? And so I've been doing that for so long that I started to go through my head. And when I say my head, I really mean my heart. I want to start saying that, changing that too, because it's really been a lot more like my heart has been thinking, not my head, in a lot of these scenarios, where like in my heart, I would start hearing this of like, can you imagine what you could do if you were no longer attached to women, right? If you're no longer attached to your experience with women, your relationship with women, your outcome with women, how would you navigate your life? Because to get to the point of sex, there has to be texting, there has to be FaceTime, there has to be meeting up for a date, there has to be communication, there has to be scheduling, all this fucking shit that goes into, all this shit that goes, and that's like,
that's
if
one
you're
woman.
seeing more, if you're seeing more than one woman, you're doing that multiple times a day, you're doing that in multiple ways. And so like it's almost like you're running a business that you're losing money on. you know what I mean?
Great way of putting it.
You're and I don't mean to make it as if like I'm a product or that women are customers or anything like that. I'm just saying like the amount of effort and systemization that goes into managing relationships is strong. And if you got to G-check yourself and understand what relationships are you managing most often, right? And what are those relationships bringing you? And yes, it could be a pleasurable experience. It could be a wonderful experience, but is it just a wonderful experience? What else is happening when you're doing this? You know what I mean? And are there more important ways you can be utilizing those same skills that actually take you to another place in life that you desire to be in? And I started noticing this is like, damn, like, yeah, if I wasn't focusing on this, well, how much more time would I have to build my business? How much more time would I have to further my career? How much more time would I have to further my fitness and my knowledge and deepen my spiritual practice? Because to me, that has really become the foundation of everything. Is like the more in tune I am with myself, the more in tune I am with God or the universe, fill in the blank, or both. The more everything externally has become is tuning itself to my experience. And so like I'm craving more and more spending time in that world. And so this was like a few days ago, right? I don't remember. Oh, April 22nd. So this was 2 days ago, where this is being recorded on the 24th. April 22nd. It's like 9 o'clock. It's 9 o'clock at night. That's typically when I shut things down and I start getting ready for bed. And I shit you not, if anyone's had a similar experience like this, like they'll understand, this intense wave of energy like comes over myself. And it's just, I just keep this, like I keep hearing like go abstinent. I keep hearing, Ruben's getting some food right now. I'm assuming some tea. Oh, he's about to sip some tea.
Because we're going over the tea, you got it.
Yeah.
So, continue.
So I'm sitting there, right? And I start hearing this, this voice inside of myself. And again, it's coming from my heart. Like I can feel it. It's coming from my heart. It's like, go choose abstinence. Like stop having sex. Like just stop having sex. And I was like, man, man, I don't know. I was like, I don't know if I could do that, man. I don't know. It's a tall order to fill. That was a tall order to fill. It's like go a year. Like that's what I heard. Like go a year without sex. So that was the first thing. And I was like, man, I'm just sitting there and I'm like, I can't get this out of my body. Like I can't get this thought out of my body. And then it becomes more aggressive. Like I start, like the energy becomes more intense, more and more intense. I'm like buzzing, and it goes, and then it starts saying this to me, and I started becoming more intrigued. It was like, choose abstinence and you will transform. Choose abstinence and you will transform. Like he just kept saying that. And I was like, man, I don't know. I was like, I gotta sleep on it. That's what I first told myself. I gotta sleep on it. And I remember I tried calling you. I actually tried calling Ruben, and he didn't pick up his phone. And to me, that was a sign. To me, it was a sign, because I texted you and I called you, and there was no answer. And I know it was late.
It was late. Like, yeah, I was surprised when I saw it the next morning, because usually I turn my shit off at like 7:38, but this time my phone was actually close to dying, funny enough. And it was in the charger a little earlier than usual. And we were just like, I was with Karina eating dinner and whatnot. And the fact that, it was a sign, bro.
It was a sign. And then, and I didn't stop there. Like I tried calling another friend.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I tried calling Mustafa, and he didn't answer. Right. And so I was like, oh, I have to make this decision for myself. Like it was that, to me, that was a sign that the universe was like, don't let somebody like
else influence you, right?
Yeah, don't rationalize your way out of this. Like sit and make a decision. And my heart was just like, again, just like, like if you were watching this on YouTube, you'll see what I'm doing with my hands. But it was basically just like this, like Kundalini energy, chi energy. It was just like pulsating throughout my entire body. And I was like, fucking A, dude. And so I sat there, and I was just like, okay, let's do a year. Let's do a year.
Then you text the men's group.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I text this.
Yes, and then I text the men's group as like to confirm, to what's that word called, to declare that this is a choice that I'm making. And it was clear as day. Like I'm like, to be honest, of course the urge of like having sex, of course the urge of being single, of course, like all of it, all of it is, it's not like I'm some sort of like enlightened spiritual being that could just let shit go. There was a feeling of like, damn, like these are opportunities that I'm choosing to not take, and I don't know what this is going to mean or to do, other than the voice that kept saying, choose abstinence and you will transform. And it just felt so right, to the point that I was like, if I don't do this, I know this is going to bite me in the ass. I know it. I know if I don't do this, this is going to bite me in the ass. And so here we are, 2 days in to a 365-day journey. Actually, I didn't tell you this, Ruben. I ended up talking to Mustafa a few days later, and this is the month of Ramadan, right?
Oh, right.
Yeah. Do you know that the last time, because I checked when was the last time I ejaculated, which was the last time I had sex, was on the first day of Ramadan. I didn't even know that, but technically, if you were going to count it from the last time I ejaculated, it would have been the first day of Ramadan. Which, like, I'm not Muslim or religious, but that is a very holy holiday for Muslim, and that to me is another sign of like,
it's a different version of the fast.
Yeah, exactly. A sexual fast.
A sexual fast, yeah.
A sexual fast. And so, my goal with this, and then we'll get into your version of this, because there is a version for Ruben. My goal with this, or my intention, let's say my intention with this is that over the next year, what I'm excited to experience is let's just address the women part. I still want to have interesting, incredible relationships with women,
of course.
but this is going to be a time where I get to really witness women without the desire to have sex with them, or without the pressure of having sex with them, right?
Exactly.
And it's going to be fascinating, because I don't know how many women have experienced a guy who's abstinent, and I don't know what the reaction will be. So it'll be cool to see that. Also, it'll be interesting to see like what relationships will develop, which ones will fall off, which ones will go, which ones will become just amazing friendships, who will introduce me to who, because that pressure isn't there. But I'm still like a flirtatious person. I'm still like energetically, I'm still a sensual person. So there's obviously going to be connections. But what is going to happen with these relationships, I'm super curious about. The second thing that I'm super curious about is, and I'm already starting to experience this, and I know I have a strong feeling this is going to flourish a lot this year, is my ability to embody myself. Because so much, I mentioned this earlier, like so much of the energy I've spent working on myself, a portion of it has been because I lacked female connection, female interest when I was younger. I've strived for that so much in my life, even though I don't really talk about it or whatever, like that is in the back of my head pretty often, and I would filter myself, like I've literally built a version of myself that I know works with women. I know, like, if I am X way, and that doesn't mean I'm lying. I'm not lying about who I am. I just choose consciously which parts of myself I want to put forth to gain the best results, type of thing, right? Exactly. And if you think you don't do that, listener,
oh yeah, you do it. Unconsciously, you're doing it. Oh, this worked before, I'm doing this again.
Yes, you do that shit all the time. So
read the art of Seduction by Robert Greene, and you will see how much unconsciously we attract others, besides the biological component, but just what we learn from growing up. It's scary. Like, you probably think you know what you're doing. You're doing that much, is like 10%.
Oh wow, I should read that book.
Yeah, The Art of Seduction. Yeah, definitely. Please, highly recommend it to everyone, including you. Actually, great. Your birthday is coming up.
You know what I'm saying? Hook a brother up. So yeah. So freaking. So because of that, I'm curious to see how much more of myself will I allow to be seen in front of women, and in front of others, because there is no attachment to that outcome. You know, there is no attachment to like, what does this say? Like, if I don't have sex with this woman, what does it say about me? If this woman doesn't like me, what does that say about me? Blah, 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 so on and so forth. Because I'm like, I'm telling you what my boundaries are now, you know, like I've never set that type of boundary before. So the fact that I am, like, what is that going to entail? The next thing is something I heard in a video that I watched by Hindz, Hindz, who he calls it celibacy, but that's not actually, I mean, I'm not a person of semantics, but from what I looked up, like celibacy is committing to abstinence until marriage, versus abstinence itself is choosing not to have sex for a certain period of time.
And you could be abstinent for anything though, like alcohol, drugs,
exactly,
things of that nature.
Which exactly. So his videos are called, like, I think, Why I Chose Celibacy. But he's really talking, he and it's like a 3-part series, but he's really talking about his experience with abstinence. He's like 3 years on abstinence.
I'm gonna pause you. There's a beautiful hummingbird outside of my window just now.
Okay, we're gonna appreciate it.
Yeah, we're gonna appreciate it. It's been visiting us all morning, and I know there's again, we're meta. It's a spiritual thing. I got to look it up after we're done.
Especially that it came right now, you know?
Exactly. Continue, Jesse.
Well, there was a spider, I think you saw in the group chat, there was a spider that was on my wall today. And it was like perfectly...
It was huge.
Well, I know it wasn't that big. I just zoomed in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It was very tiny, but it was so symmetrical that I was like, whoa, that's like a cool thing. And the first thing that came to me was like, you're webbing together the life you desire, you know? So definitely a totem.
Keeps coming back. Sorry, I keep seeing the little wings. What was your last point?
My last point was that so I was watching these videos with Hindz, and he said something in that video that blew my mind, because it's so fucking true. He said, you know, you can't learn how to have sex until you learn how to not have sex.
Yes, I was thinking about that as you were talking, because I watched the videos. So yes, that was such a powerful statement.
It was such a powerful statement, because it's so true. Like we've talked about, right? Like jerking off since we were 12, this narrative around men being dogs and being horny and just always wanting to have sex, and I myself embracing that narrative. It's like, yeah, I didn't grow up being told that I should preserve my sexual energy, that that male sexual energy is sacred and it's powerful and it can be used to create beautiful things in the world externally, but also internally. And the fact that I can have this experience is going to be just fascinating to see, you know, what does that mean? What is that going to mean when I do decide to have sex again with a partner? Like, what will that look like? And then to go back, you know, once more to talking about women, it's like if I do meet a woman that I'm actually interested in building some level of relation with, and I am sexually interested in her, like, what's the longest you've gone where you and the woman are into each other? How long have you gone without having sex with her? Right? Like, how long? Like, how long have you actually waited? Right? Tops.
It happens, right? So fast.
So like, you have this urge, you have this desire, and you just act on it, you know? And we're gonna bring this back to you in a second, but like the fact that, like, oh, I could explore someone and hold that line, that urge for X long, you know, is going to, unless I meet her like the day before.
Right. Which will probably be how it happens, by the
way. But like, if I meet someone and I just cultivate that energy, right? Just build that up with her for a fucking year or however long it is. It's like, what does that mean? Like, there's so much curiosity I have, right? And then, you know, lastly, I'm sure there's tons more, but to end it here, like, to now have this energy, to let it cultivate and breathe in and out of my body and use it for all the things that I'm creating and developing in my world and building in my world, without that distraction, without that need, you know, because it's like, there is no outcome. I'm choosing not to have an outcome. So, but I can have, so I'm going to choose to take this energy and put it somewhere else. That's what I'm excited for. As well as, and lastly, I'll say this, like Mantak Chia, the multi-orgasmic man, cultivating male sexual energy. And there's actually a London Real video, because my problem with Montauk's books, and this could be a story I'm telling myself, is he's like so scientific about everything,
right,
that it's hard for me to like.
I never finished the multi-orgasmic man for that reason.
It's so scientific and there's so much information that I'm like, I don't fucking know how to utilize this. Right. But in a London Real interview that he did with Brian Rose, he actually gives a pretty, like, it's almost like a workout of like Qigong exercises that you can do every day, to just get your chi moving in and out of your body. And he said, like, everyone can do this, you know, like, it's for everybody at any level. These exercises that get you to move your energy up and down your spine, into your organs, strengthen your organs, strengthen your heart, strengthen, you know, everything from an energetic perspective. So I'm just going to start implementing that practice in the morning, before I sit down to do my meditations, and do that consistently over the next year or so, and see what that brings me. Like, actually starting to work with my energy systems and just continue to cultivate that. And it's powerful, man. Like I said, like, I could feel the power that is growing within me. And it's not like a power where I'm like, like, it's not like I'm fucking like out there just like roaring.
It's like a calm, collected, serene, calm center of the storm. Like, it's not that what most people think.
It's like this, it's just like the bleeding edge, you know, like just the bleeding edge of intensity, that is manageable within my body. And I know other people feel it. That's the other thing that I know, like the way I'm connecting with certain people, the way I'm communicating with certain things, it's just like they're working in my favor. And it's not a coincidence. It's because of the vibrations and the frequency. So there you are, folks. No masturbation, no sex, 1 year. Here we go. Your boy is here. And I'll tell you, I never fucking thought I'd be here, ever. I thought that shit was crazy. I thought I could never do it. I thought I was just a horny bastard. And and I'd never moved past that. And here we are, you know. And I'm stoked. I'm so stoked. I've never felt so aligned with a choice like that. I've never felt so empowered by with a choice like that in my life. And now I'll bring it over to you, Ruben. So, because I know we talked about this, and you had some of your own thoughts, your own, you know, volition. So please.
Of course. Well, before I get into myself, for folks listening, we are going to continue to check in with Jesse on how he's doing with this, because I think it's going to be important, whether that's like a, you know, bi-monthly basis. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But, you know, it'll be really cool to see you on this journey, and to see what's coming up for you. One, what's working, what's not working, like all these other things that will come out of this, because you are definitely have some kind of a year. I can only imagine when you find a woman who's absolutely beautiful, everything you fucking want, and then you can't have sex with her. You know, like you can't have sex. And in that video as well, Heinz talked about sex is also communication, which is like a different form, right? It's an energetic communication, which, you know, I was telling Karina this morning, I was like, hey, if anything ever happens to us, like it'll be so difficult. I'll be so picky with choosing the women I want to sleep with, because just knowing that in my head, like you're shifting, you're trading energy. Like I can't just do that with anyone, you know, like.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, going back to when I spoke to my partner about this, it's like something that came up when you send me the videos of Heinz, and I'm based a lot of this based on what you told me and the videos. And my question is, how would you do something like this in a relationship? Because there are some parts that I don't waste time on, right? Like the pursuit of,
yes.
right? So I've been able to cultivate a lot of what I've created in my life, including like at my day job, like how much work I'm doing there and how much impact I'm bringing there. I definitely like thank that for being in a relationship. Like being in a relationship is the greatest because I don't have to waste time in the pursuit. Like what you were talking about, I was probably wasting 10 to 12 hours a week, you know, dating 4 women at the same time. That was not an easy feat. It was a full-time job outside of my full-time job. You know what I mean? Like, and like you said, it's like it was just money going, you know, we go out to eat, we go out to the movies, we still do stuff together, and then they come home. I'm sacrificing sleep, I'm getting 4 hours a night, all that stuff. So I'm not doing any of that. But what I was curious with Karina is like we've been in a relationship 7 years. We're in our 7th year, so we're going to be hitting 8 years next February. So it's just like we've hit that point where and Aziz Ansari's book goes through this because he wrote that book with an evolutionary biologist. There's compassionate love, which you experience within the first 2 to 3 years of your relationship, and then there's companion love. And companion love is something that you experience with family, friends, you know, your brother, your sister. It's very like you're here, like regardless, you're not leaving. So, you know, I don't, you know, like biologically, you're not just producing the same juices as you would when you're in the first part of a relationship. So obviously, as it with anyone, sex does wane. Like you do it less. Like in the beginning, you do it every fucking day, and that's something that has happened to us. Like it's been maybe a weekly thing, maybe a bi-weekly thing, depending on how busy we are. It's just not as often as it used to be, and that's the God's honest truth. Trust me, we asked Karina if we could share this, but it's definitely been a challenge because I am a huge sexual beast, right? But it was like, you know, with this conversation and over the last year or so, I've been reading a lot of more spiritual texts, and just understanding energy and being like, where's that get dumped? All this stuff. I was like watching the video like last night. Karina ended up going to sleep, and I was like, huh. So if we were to do this in a relationship, my thing is maybe the fact that most people, and this is just, I don't know, I haven't done the research yet, so hear me out, folks. But most people, the reason why there's so much statistics of all these people in long-term relationships, I mean, it gets so bad. Like if you read Esther Perel's, both of her books, which are fascinating, Mating in Captivity, and I forget the other one. I forget the other one. You bought it for me. Rekindling something. It'll come. But
that's the title. Rekindling something.
There's both of her books. When I read them, the statistics of like married couples or couples that have been together for a long time, like it gets to a point that some of these relationships, they're either sexless or they have sex like once a month or less, like statistically, right? That's bad. But at the same time, like last night when I was going through this, like how many people, like that quote, right? You don't learn how to have sex until you stop having sex. And I'm freezing, or you're freezing.
You froze. What'd you say?
I said that. What was the quote from Heinz? It was like you don't really know how to have sex until you stop having sex, right?
Yeah, no, it's like, you don't know how to have sex until you know how to not have sex.
Yes. So that's something like what I think most people, right? We lose our virginities in our teens, like majority, like average, unless you're like religious or whatever, which is something the statistics around religion have been dipping for many, many years now. So more and more people have been having sex at a younger age. But do you really unlearn how you had sex back then and learn new ways of having sex that's just not about penetration and orgasm? But you're able to add intimacy. You're able to bring back in passion because you're not only worried about the orgasm, right? Because that's what most people worry about. Like, I'm doing this because I have a goal to get to. But instead of that goal being orgasm, what if it was to create intimacy, to create a sense of closeness, to create more of this and this beautiful energy that both of you are emitting? You're creating this fucking bubble, and you fucking become dynamite, you know, like as a couple. So that's what came to my mind yesterday. And this morning, like, Karina and I have what we call our coffee chats every Saturday morning. And then Sunday we do a deep dive check-in. So I was like, hey, what do you think of this? I was listening to the video. I kind of gave her like the rundown. Like, at first she was like, hey, it's bad enough that we only have sex maybe 2 to 3 times a month. And you're trying to say not at all? Like, that's bad enough. But I was like, hey, what if we think it this way? One, and you know, we talked about this, like, one, we want to bring a tantra coach on the podcast. I know you have somebody in mind. I actually also have somebody in mind. So I think we should do that. Like, bring somebody on the podcast that just has coached people around this, because tantra isn't just the act of sex and penetration, but it's the act of energetically producing the passion from just scratch, right? Like, because we're energetic beings. So I was like, one, we're going to learn, right? So there's going to be 2 books that I'm ordering. Sex Transmutation, I think it's called, for men. And then there's one for women. So I'm going to get that for us both. And I was just like, what I want us to start doing, because once again, going back to how you learned how to have sex, Karina is very feminine, right? She won't initiate. She's very much like, you always initiate. You are the one to always do it. So it's like, okay, I don't mind that at all. But I would like to know, because as you get like deeper into the years, that, and this is something that people are not willing to share, the times you want to have sex will not always align. When you're first getting into a relationship, a woman wants to like you, bro. Like, dudes out here, and ladies, I mean, I would love to hear from you if this is true, but it's true from the women I've been with, right? Sometimes they would, because they want you to like them so much, they will just go with your time. Like, maybe they not be feeling it in that moment, but because you're feeling it, they'll do it anyway. Right? But something you start getting into as you're in a long-term relationship is sometimes you just not there. She may be there, you may not be there. You may be there, she may not be there. So how do you find that middle ground, right? So I think there's a portion of this where we get to figure that out. We get to communicate, and this is what we spoke about. Hey, I'm feeling this right now, but right now we're doing like abstinence for 30 days. That's what we decided on. Let's try it, right? Let's start small and then see how it is and go wide. But hey, when we feel it, let's be honest and be like, hey, I just felt an urge. Can you come and sit with me and hold this space? Let's breathe together. Let's meditate together. Let's really
love that, dude.
Start creating the energy. So after the 30 days, it's going to be a bombastic experience. You know what I mean?
Bombastic.
Because we're going to be experiencing this bubble together and building it and building it and building it. And then it's like, okay, let's try and see what that's going to look like for this 30 days, which is not a long time. And then expand from there. But the goal is to, like, the biggest thing, and I told her this because she was like, but like, how would I know? And I was just like, no, you just have to communicate. And like, we would literally sit very close together and hold the space with the energy, not act on it, because sometimes we'll just be like, it's early in the morning, we just woke up, and that's usually when we want it, because we're both, you know, your body is like, especially as a man, you're just primed, you're ready to fucking go. So, you know, for me, that's more of like, hey, can we sit up? Like, yeah, we're gonna have our coffee time, but I want to feel your skin on me, and just like, and be there with that energy without feeling the need to, you know what I mean?
Yes.
But like, sit with it, breathe into it, have her breathe into that essence as well, and we're breathing this shit in together, and like, you know, just creating this mixture of sexual energy, and just who knows what that's gonna bring over the next. That's 2 beings creating it. I know you're doing it alone. So my curiosity is like, what happens when you bring another soul into this and you're just doing this shit together? You know what I mean? Plus the no masturbation, which I've been doing for 23 days already, and it's going to be continuously going strong. So with the mix of that and just being like, let's create this space and this energy. So that's what we're doing. That's our experiment.
Dude, I fucking love everything you just said, man. That's gonna be so it's gonna be so powerful, bro. Like,
and what's great, I'm put a caveat to this too. What's amazing is that Karina just signed up for Monica's program. We've had Monica on the podcast before, and she has it's called the Queen Alchemy program. It's for a woman to really get in touch with herself. And I think it's going to be powerful for Karina to be doing this at the same time and learning these things while we're doing this. So it's like just everything is doubling up. And I'm like, I told her this one. I was like, we're going from like level 1 of like what sex should be, what majority of people experience, to this like level 2. And it's going to be like a whole different experience. You know what I mean? Like beyond it. You know what I mean? So we're growing up sexually. Like we're not teens anymore in this space. We're growing to the next phase.
Dude, I love that because, you know, we talked about this, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier. It's like, you know, the fact, like, because think about how often, for the listener, like, think about how often you go on a date with someone and you want you want them, right? You want to have them right there on the dinner table. Like, fuck it, like, let's go right now. But because you're learning about each other, because this person might be important to you, and you want to, for men and women, right? You want to cultivate a relationship with this person. You will choose not to act on your urges and give it time, right? And so like you're building this like desire and this force towards this person and not acting upon it, and that draws you closer to them, right? Until you.
Well, most men probably end up jerking off when they get home, but anyway.
Yes, but even still, like your desire for that person is growing and growing and growing, and versus like in a situation you guys have been in, which I agree. I would assume a lot of people who've been in a relationship for 7+ years have had to face this, which is like anytime that you guys are aligned because of the scarcity of it, you guys would act on it, right? So anytime that urge would come up, you guys would just offload it onto each other. Versus here, you're gonna like take that energy, feel it, and then bring it into the rest of your day. And just having to be in the same room with a person while you're feeling like that for days on end. Whew. I'm excited for you, bro. I'm excited for you, bro. I have a feeling this is gonna be fucking awesome.
That's what I said, because I was like, you know, this has been a challenge. We've always been talking about like, how can we have more sex? How can we do it 2 times a week instead of 2 to 3 times a month? Like this has been a challenge for like the past year and a half to about 2 years. And it's like, oh, like the realization came to me like, oh, maybe because both of us need to level up. And this is what happens to most people. They don't know that. They don't know that they have to level up in their sexual life. Like there's learnings to do. There's things to do beyond just being like, oh, we feel the urge, you pump it out, boom, and you're done. You know what I mean? Like, that's why it gets boring, because you're not exploring beyond just that. So that's what we're going to be doing, just exploring like what those pieces are, which is why we're going to be bringing a tantra coach, because I want to get some thoughts and ideas as well. And then we'll go from there. So that's the plan. 30 days. So folks, we will have a follow-up podcast about that a month from now.
Yes.
And it's April.
How exciting, bro. How exciting. Taking things to the next level, man.
That's what we're about here in the Ruben Jessie podcast. We don't stay.
That's right. We do not stay the same. We do not stay the same. All right, brother. Let's bring this baby home. Any finishing, closing out thoughts?
No, I already said everything that I'm going. It's just like, I won't be sharing much on Instagram, but if you're listening, like, you just follow the podcast. We'll definitely be bringing it up here, because I think it's important for us to explore this and see how we level up, both of us, relationship wise, and you with your own relationship with yourself, and you know, just see.
But like, I would say for you and yourself too, you know, like this is, you know, and my relationships, everything. So as above, so below. You're reading the Hermetic principles as we speak. So, you know,
That's very true.
It's going to affect everything. It's going to affect everything. And the last thing I want to say, well, it has been really interesting to witness as I've, made this declaration and shared it with the men in my life, right? Listen, we've done a lot of different challenges. We've done a lot of different, we've made lots of decisions and have done different things in our lives, right? And I've shared that with the men in my life. And every time I share something, there is typically a positive response, right? Like, congratulations, man, that's awesome. Like, I'm so happy for you, blah, 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 right?
Right.
Or like, that's dope. Like, you're a badass, whatever, which is awesome. But what I've noticed, and I strictly say this, I'm not saying this in a braggadocious way. It's more of just like something I've noticed that made me curious, which is like specifically with abstinence, communicating that to the men in my life. The response has been so intense in the sense of like, wow, man, like, I'm so proud of you. Like that's amazing. I can't believe you're doing that. Like, dude, like, whoa, like it's been a visceral response from other men. And that makes me wonder, what is it about abstinence that is speaking to the soul of these men? And what does it mean to the soul of other men who hear that, and what does that penetrate within them that is evoking that type of response? Because I've never gotten that type of response for anything else I've ever done. And it's not like the typical, like, yo, I just made $1 million, or like, I just sold a business, or I just did this or did that, like it's just something that is very much, out of the norm in many senses, and is speaking to men. So if you're a guy listening to this, just sit with that, and if you want to reach out and hit me up or hit Ruben up and talk about it, like, we're here for it. But like, sit with that, and just, if it does penetrate you in some way, if it does make you feel something, what is it? Just be curious about that and explore that. And I empower you to fucking go out there and make choices that speak to you and help you become more you, help you realize who you are more in every way possible. And don't be afraid to do shit that's not fucking normal, because that's where the gold is. So, aho,
brother.
Aho, brother. I'm excited for us. There's a new chapter in our lives right here.
New chapter coming up, as always.
As always.
Have like mini chapters within the big chapters, you know what I mean? Like, that's how we do.
That's how we do. That's how we do, brother.
Create that kind of life, you know what I'm saying, folks? Well,
yes,
until next time, folks, enjoy the rest of your day. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Y'all already know what to do, so I won't even say it.
Share with a friend. Subscribe. Love you guys.
Love you guys. Peace.
Peace.